Hey guys, my name is Alex Lebel. I recently finished top 4 at the Montreal Regional playing Voiceless Voice. Before going into the deck list, some quick shoutouts. First, shoutouts to James from Hakuna My Data for allowing me to post this profile on his channel. Much appreciated. Shoutouts to my local community in Trois-Rivières, Quebec. You guys are one of the big reasons why I improve so quickly. Also, shoutouts to my old Pokemon VGC community. Without further waiting, let's head into the deck list. The first card is 3 Saphira Dragon Queen. The fact that its search is optional means that it can play very well through Jowgen Lockbird. And the fact that it can also add from the graveyard is very important, especially in the grind game, where having ritual names either in the graveyard or in the deck uh, can make a big difference depending on which card you can successfully resolve. This card also is really good at baiting interruptions from your opponent because it has such a high value. Next is one Old Man Saravis. Next up is 3 copies of Lope. Getting this card into rotation should be your number one priority, as the deck pretty much entirely depends on her being on the field or in the graveyard. And likewise, if you play against Voiceless Voice, your top priority should be to cut access to this card. Once you have your engine rolling, it's not too hard to get additional copies, but the first one is critically important to get into rotation. Getting multiple copies is very good because they can either serve as additional tribute fodder or serve as link line material. Uh, Post side, I would try to avoid, if possible, if I only have access to one copy, to send her to the graveyard as part of the ritual tribute, because a lot of people are siding in bestials currently, and it's such an easy target that you don't really want to get banished. If you have multiple copies, it's fine, but post side, it's keeping one in rotation is so important. The next card is 3 Diviner of the Herald, as well as 1 3S. The thing is with Diviner, you can also tribute her from hand for a ritual summon if it ends up being safer, or if your RPD use your normal for something else. For example, uh, it's kind of hard because she's only level 2, and since you cannot over tribute, there's not many combinations that will work. But Diviner plus 1 Saphira makes it so you can ritual summon a level 7, and then Diviner will trigger in the graveyard to summon the low from deck. That's another play you can make. For the rituals, I chose to play 2 Skull Guardians as well as 2 Soravis. I chose to play 2 copies of Soravis over, let's say, a Pendulum Graph. Soravis is such a good card. One of the reasons why Voiceless is so good is because you have this card in engine. Uh, Going second and even going first, it's so good at just blanking, targeting hand traps, like Imperm or Veiler, but also cards like Princess in the Graveyard. Uh, if possible, I will even try to search one, if possible, before committing to my normal summon to make sure that it goes through. The thing with Pendulum Graph is that since you cannot special it from deck with Soravis, sometimes it can be awkward because you kind of want to keep a Skull Guardian in deck for the ritual spell to summon if you ever get super polyed or something. And Soravis, like I said, you kind of want it for protection, and not being able to summon this card from deck can be troublesome at times, just for resource management. So I feel like 2 Soravis is the right way to go for this deck specifically. The extra engine that I was mentioning just now that I was playing in this deck is the branded engine, consisting of 3 branded fusion and 1 Fallen of Albaz. It's really good to get the pieces of your main voices engine that you are missing in the graveyard. Most of the time it's going to be a Low or a Saphira, but sometimes you can also send a Trias, like for example, if your normal summon of Diviner was imperm or negated by any means. So you can still get the tribute off and you get your low in that way. And on top of that, you get a Mirror Jade on the field. Also, one thing to note with the branded engine is that it plays really well into draw, uh, because since you send straight from deck to grave what you need, uh, you can it plays around draw pretty well. And like I mentioned earlier, Sephira can add a ritual from grave. So if it's your only way to get a ritual in rotation, you can also send like a Skull Guardian or a Sorevis that way, which is very good. All in all, it just gives a lot of flexibility to this deck. So I think this engine is really good. I also play something in the side deck for when I go first that furthers what this engine can do. So I was very happy with this deck, with this engine. And next up are the Voiceless Spell and Trap. I chose to play 3 Barrier as well as 2 Ritual Spells and 1 Trap. If for some reason you don't need to search a Saphira or a Low or a Skull Guardian with the continuous spell, the spell can also search the trap, so this is something I did very often. In the Voiceless Mirror, this card is very important because whoever gets to remove this card from the opponent first will, and pretty much whichever player gets to abuse this card the most will usually win the grind game. And finally, we have the consistency cards, mainly 3 copies of Pre-Prep as well as 2 Pot of Prosperity. The last cards in the deck are the hand traps. I play 12 of them. I play 3 Effect Veilers, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Ash Blossom, and 3 Nibiru. Nibiru not only is a very good disruption on its own, it's also a light level 11, meaning that it can be used as the entire tribute fodder should I need it. And by the way, this is the best Nibiru token, don't at me. Next up for the extra deck, for the branded lineup, I chose to play 2 Albion, 1 Lubellion, 1 Mare Jade, and 1 Sanctifier. 99% of the time when I activate Branded Fusion, game 1, you will be playing, it will be into Albion. And I play 2 copies because when I do make Mare Jade, it's always an Albion that I want to send, because during the end phase I get a Branded Fusion to my hand. Whether it's live or not is not really relevant, because if I go straight from Albion into Mare Jade, I cannot activate the second Branded Fusion. But it's okay in this deck because the fact that it gives you a spell in your hand can be useful for when you need to special summon Old Man Sorevis from hand, since you need to recycle a spell. And you don't always have a spell in your grave for it. So just the fact that you get a free spell to your hand can be very clutch. And oftentimes you'll have a Sorevis as well, but it's not always the case, and just having a Mare Jade gives just that extra board presence that sometimes is exactly what you need. Sanctifier, its main purpose is for a card that I'm playing in the side deck. This card has a lot of merits, even outside of gimmick puppet shenanigans. It felt really good in general. Next, I played the extra diviner targets, being Netis and Arclight. Other cards, Chaos Angel. It very rarely comes up. The main way to make it is either with low plus Trias or with a level 7 that you have on board plus a hand trap. And there's also Typhon. Next up for the legs, I chose to play 2 Dynamundo. Since I play Branded Fusion very often, I'll be locked out of links, so I don't make that card very often. I will often prioritize searching the trap card if I can, instead of making this card, because this card, yes, it's very good, but it's also very risky because all your opponent needs is just 1 interruption to prevent Dynamundo from resolving, and suddenly your endboard is very weak. But 2 is still fine. You realistically only need 1, but the second one can come up because Dynamundo just so happens to be another way to recycle your rituals from the graveyard back into the deck. In the grind game, that can be important, as well as just being a good removal as its front effect when it's summoned to spin back a card in the deck. Next up, I also play 1 Relinquish Anima. Next up is SP. It's the main reason why you need a Link 1 in the deck, just to get her second effect. I also played one IP Masquerena. Uh, in theory, IP, when you have enough resources, you can make it as part of your end board with IP plus Sorevis, and then when you tag out Sorevis into a ritual, you get more bodies, then you can IP into SP, which is an additional disruptions. And finally, just one Underworld Goddess. For the side deck, first of all, the man himself, Jowgen the Spiritualist. Uh, you make it with Branded Fusion. You send it to summon Albion Sanctifier, and then Sanctifier just reborns it to your field and gives them a Fallen of Albaz. Jargon is just really hard to out. It's been a known combo for a while that you can do that with Branded Fusion, but it never really felt good in any deck really, because you can just normal summon anything, walk onto Jargon, or negate it with any way that you want. But in Voiceless Voice, not only is it protected by an Omni-Negate, the fact that you play Barrier the Voiceless Voice also means that it cannot be targeted by anything, so they cannot easily just negate it with like an Imperm or a Forbidden Chalice or anything. But they also cannot attack into it because they need to attack into the Ritual Tower, so Jargon suddenly becomes extremely hard to out. I also mentioned before I side in the third pot. It gets me to Branded Fusion because ideally post-side I want to get the Jowgen luck as often as possible. So Pot of Prosperity gets me to that. One Call by the Grave. It's a very good defensive card because one of the only ways to prevent Sanctifier from resolving, since you cannot target it, is with Ghost Bell. This is one way of dealing with it. You will have an Omni-Negate most of the time, but this is an extra way of dealing with it. Likewise, I also played 3 Ghost Bell. Not only is it a good hand trap on its own, but I also found myself siding in going first. Because if one of my goals is to get the Jowgen luck as often as possible, one of the only other things other than Ghost Bell itself that people can do is try to Bestial away one of the targets in my graveyard. So Ghost Bell can come in clutch to negate a Bestial from resolving, and then once Jowgen hits the field, it's game over. So Ghost Bell helps me get there, on top of being just a good hand trap in general. So it felt really good. Next up is 3 Ghost Mourner. It's my only card that can deal effect damage in this deck. I also played 3 Cosmic Cyclones. And finally, the last card. This last slot is pretty debatable. I wanted something that could help going first when I did not want to make Jowgen. So for the matchups where it's not good, or just as an extra piece of going first, I did not want to make another Floodgate because it would be kind of redundant. So the card I chose to play is 3 copies of Sun Scolding. The reason I chose this card over the more popular Solemn Strike is because Solemn Strike, its 2 effects are to either negate and destroy a monster effect or to negate a special summon, which is exactly what my main engine already does. Like Skull Guardian will negate and destroy, and Sorevis will negate a special summon, so Solemn Strike felt redundant, and Solemn Judgment, while it would be the better option, in some matchups it's really important to let the monster that they are summoning activate their effect so you can get away the once per turn clause. But Solemn Judgment cannot do that, like it has to negate the summon first. But Sun Scalding, I have the opportunity to choose whichever I want. So it's really good, and its downside is not really relevant because in this deck I will pretty much never have anything set. I only have face-up continuous traps. The only thing that I could have set is either a call by, which is a one-of, or a Imperm, but most of the time I will side out Imperm for this because it just gets the same job done but better. So that concludes my deck profile. Thanks again to Icona My Data for hosting, but more importantly, thank you for watching until the end, and hopefully see you next time.